Moving on to bone tissue and what bone is made out of, and like any other connective tissue, bone is made up of an extracellular matrix and cells. Now, I'm briefly going to talk about the extracellular matrix in the next slide, but the focus of this learning objective is to be able to name and compare the functions of each of the 4 different types of bone cells. So as I mentioned, bone tissue is made up of an extracellular matrix surrounding bone cells. The extracellular matrix is made up of about 15% water, 30% collagen fibers, and 55% crystallized mineral salts. The most abundant or prevalent mineral salts are calcium and phosphate, which combine with a few other minerals to form crystals of hydroxyapatite, which are then deposited into the framework which is formed by those collagen fibers. The deposition of these crystals into that collagen fiber matrix is called calcification, and it's this process that causes the bone tissue to harden. Within this extracellular matrix of collagen fibers and hydroxyapatite, or the calcium and phosphate crystals, is where we find our bone cells. So the 4 different types of bone cells are osteoprogenitor cells, osteoblasts, osteocytes, and osteoclasts. Our osteoprogenitor cells are derived from mesenchyme. Our osteoblasts develop from osteoprogenitor cells, and our osteocytes develop from osteoblasts. Our osteoclasts are a little bit different. They actually don't descend from a line of bone cells. Our osteoclasts develop from monocytes, which are a particular type of white blood cell. So looking at each of those cells in more detail, and osteoprogenitor cells are unspecialized bone cells derived from mesenchyme. Remembering, mesenchyme is the embryonic connective tissue from which all other connective tissues are formed. The osteoprogenitor cells are the only bone cells which undergo cell division, and the resulting cells, which are produced as a result of this cell division, develop into our osteoblasts. Osteoprogenitor cells are found along the inner portion of the periosteum, which is that layer of connective tissue which surrounds the external portion of a bone, and the endosteum, which is the tissue that lines the inner layer of a bone. Osteoprogenitor cells can also be referred to as osteogenic cells, with ost referring to bone and genic meaning producing, so an osteogenic cell is referring to its capacity to produce bone cells. Osteoblasts are our immature bone cell. They're also our bone building cells. They produce and secrete collagen fibers and the other components that are needed to build the extracellular matrix of bone. The collagen fibers and other components of the extracellular matrix that are secreted by our osteoblasts is called osteoid. Now, as our osteoblasts secrete osteoid, it secretes these substances all around itself, and the cell eventually becomes trapped and surrounded by that extracellular matrix. At this time, when that cell is trapped, we now call the cell an osteocyte. So our osteocytes are our mature bone cells, which are found trapped within the extracellular matrix in a structure called a lacuna, which we'll look at shortly. They function to maintain and monitor bone metabolism and the extracellular matrix through activities like the exchange of nutrients and wastes with the blood. Osteocytes, even though they're trapped in a lacunae, can communicate with one another via their long processes, so these little arms here. And those processes extend through little tunnels called caniculi. Osteoclasts, as we have mentioned, are a little bit different to our 3 other bone cells. Osteoclasts are really big cells which are derived from the fusion or the joining of as many as 50 monocytes or white blood cells. They are found in the endosteum, and on the side of the cell that faces the bone surface, the plasma membrane is deeply folded into a ruffled border. So that's this part here. From this ruffled border, the cell releases powerful enzymes and acids, which breaks down the protein and mineral components of the underlying extracellular matrix of bone. And this breakdown of the bone extracellular matrix is termed resorption. Resorption is part of the normal development, maintenance, and repair of bone tissue. When the extracellular matrix is broken down, the calcium and the phosphate, which was deposited into that network of collagen fibers, can then be returned to the blood. So osteoclasts can therefore also play a role in both blood calcium and phosphate homeostasis.